Good morning, everyone. My name is Benjamin O'Connor. I'm a director at New London Architecture, and I'm delighted to welcome you to our webinar today, Community and Identity Shaping the Royal Docks Together. Community identities are incredibly important as the driving forces to create pride, self-respect, unity, and a sense of belonging. With the major regeneration of the Royal Docks well underway and huge amounts of investment over the next 20 years, it's vital that key aspects of the dock's history and identity are maintained and celebrated for the future. Community involvement that embraces all groups that make up the docks is central to this process and will ensure a vibrant and inclusive place is created for the long term. This offers a rare opportunity for regeneration to deliver genuine benefits to the local area and build community wealth. This webinar brings together key voices shaping the future of the Royal Docks, ensuring its past is interwoven with its future to create a unique new area of London that the local community can be proud of. This event forms part of our NLA Royal Docks programme and our community programme. And just a quick reminder before we start that you will be able to ask our speakers questions throughout the event using the Zoom Q&A button, and I'll try and get to as many of those questions as possible at the end. Our first speaker is going to be Sarah Atkinson, who's the Community Relations Manager at the Royal Docks, and she'll be giving us an overview of their community strategy. Sarah, over to you.
Thanks a lot, Ben. It's really great to be here today, and I'm really excited to share the panel with some of the partners who are working across the regeneration of the Royal Docks area. And I just wanted to start off by showing you what the scale of the opportunity is. So just flipping back one, we can see in comparison with central London there, but also relative to other growth corridors in the region. And then here the Royal Docks in relation to the rest of Newham and central London and near to the Queen Elizabeth Park, showing that this is part of a really exciting regeneration journey that the whole of East London is going on, and particularly Newham. And to tell you that there's over 1,200 acres of land, 250 acres of water, and it's at a meeting point of two big growth areas, an opportunity area, and also London's only enterprise zone. The enterprise zone means that about 8 years ago, to bring forward the regeneration, money was borrowed against future business rate income, and that business rate income is retained in the area, reinvested into the area. And the aspiration is to deliver 35,000 jobs and 4,000 homes in the direct enterprise zone. And the business rate income will drive the continued investment into the area over the next 20 years. So this is a partnership project between the Mayor of London and the Mayor of Newham and the London Economic Action Partnership. And these are the investment is mainly driven by three big development sites. And this shows in the hatched area, the space of the enterprise zone, and then where the three black dots are the points at which the three major developments are happening. So Silvertown Quays, which is managed in the development by Lendlease, our development partner who is on the call. Jessie is going to be speaking later. Royal Albert Dock, and the development partner is the Asian Business Park, and then to the Far East, Albert Island, where London Regional are the development partner. You can also see the other panel members' sites on this map. So in the blue, Tate and Lyle have two major sites, and West Silvertown Foundation have two sites near the Silvertown area. And I've also put in orange the new City Hall, because this is another big driver for change and growth, and this being a new centre for London. One of the key things that has driven the delivery plan and the readjustment of the delivery plan for the area over the past couple of years has been Newham's agenda. Newham is one of the most diverse and youngest populations in the entire country, over 100 languages spoken, but there are high levels of inequality, like many places across the UK, and deprivation. The Mayor of Newham has undertaken a community wealth building agenda, which is a really pioneering approach to ensuring an inclusive economy and good quality jobs for local people. With COVID, the recovery strategy has brought in another pioneering set of goals and ambitions, which refocuses the economy around resident well-being and health. And the measures of success in Newham will be measured against how residents' lives are improved. And that is quite a new thing when you think about our traditional measures of measuring economic growth. So we've taken all of that into consideration in updating the delivery plan, which will now be republished later this year. So we undertook a 2-year review, and that's really where the community strategy came in, because with these 5 program pillars, which have ambitions connected to them, the community and identity part has to cut across all of them to ensure that communities will benefit from and participate in the regeneration in a really long-term and ongoing way, and build local resilience and enable local people to really be part of shaping what that regeneration is. And another major thing that has powered the community strategy is recognizing the multiplicity of stakeholders in the area. So because of the scale of the project, there are actors at many different scales, and a key to ensuring communities are really part of and benefiting from the regeneration is trying to understand the role of all of these different stakeholders, and particularly communities. So this aims to map who those people are. So from the center circle, you have individuals, going outwards to groups and networks, and then the wider institutions and organizations. So we've started to build a network of all of these different partners at these different scales who are starting to input into our plans. And that's what we've been doing over the past year to develop a community strategy. And we've done that by sharing the success framework with communities and organizations and inviting them to input into it through a series of workshops to understand how is each party responsible for the types of changes we're going to make. And we're not just talking about changes the Royal Docs team are making, it's changes we collectively want to make and see and help evolve together across the area in all different parts of people's lives. And that has built a really rich picture for us, which has helped us to develop a community strategy that really centers on collaboration. So this is kind of where we've ended up with, is that no particular party is responsible for communities benefiting from and participating in the Royal Docs regeneration. It's up to communities, it's up to businesses, it's up to developers, it's up to the Royal Docs team. It's really up to how we work together. So we've started to see our role in the Royal Docs team and the communities program as being a facilitator, a coordinator of the investment going to communities and of how communities participate in the programs that are happening, and making sure that investment is optimized, that different engagement and participation processes are talking to each other, and that our measures of success are shared and starting to focus a little bit more on some of these indicators around health and well-being and local prosperity, which is something that Jessie will talk about later. Another key part of the programme that I'm going to share with you is how we are working with young people. So talking about the history of the area, there's been a history of people feeling they're not part of the regeneration conversations, and the regeneration comes over the past 20 years and leaves them out. So this isn't a plan only for young people, it's a plan to ensure that older generations, long-term residents, but particularly young people who can live and work and create the area are really going to have an input into it over the next 20 years. And we started working with youth organizations across the area to plan how we do this. And we really took a long time to figure this out. So 6 to 8 months, talking to young people, talking to youth organizations who advised us, don't do any more Zoom calls, don't ask people questions about what they want, create an experience where young people can start socializing again, building their skills, getting together and starting to feel involved. So we took that advice and we did an event on the 2nd of June, which I would like to invite Mohammed to talk about. So Mohammed joined this youth event and he was one of the youth leaders in helping to facilitate it. And hopefully he's going to be interested in working more with us in the future because he's fantastic. And I'd like to hand over to him to talk about what happened on the day.
Hi everyone, I hope you can hear me. My name is Mohammed, I'm 21, I'm a local resident who lives not too far from the Royal Docs, and I got involved with the Royal Docs through their community program for public spaces. And this is basically a program that just that looks to involve the community, get feedback on the public spaces and changes that are going on in the area. And since joining that event, I've been involved in the Royal Docks' first ever youth event. This event happened at the beginning of last month at the top of the Terrace Hotel, our local hotel that you can see in the picture. And the whole purpose of the event was really to open up a gateway between young people and the regeneration that's happening in and around the Royal Docks, and to really give us a space for young people to express their current experiences and express the priorities for the future of the Royal Docks. The event was led or facilitated by young people such as myself, and it was based, and the whole event was based on the brief given to us by the Royal Docks, and we created the activities and the agenda. Myself, another young person called Famida, and 2 other youth leaders from the GLA also helped to run and design the event. On the day, we ran a series of interactive events with the intention of engaging and open up the dialogue between young people. We started with an activity called Graffiti Wall, and we did that to identify the current barriers faced by young people, especially coming out of time of COVID. We wanted to identify some of their barriers and identify some of the ways we could turn those barriers into opportunities. I then also led an activity called Mayor of the Day, which we basically nominated a mayor from each group to stand up and let us know what kind of policies they would have if they were Mayor of the Day. And we also had small group discussions about what young people would recommend about improving the area in terms of bettering public spaces, in terms of using the water, in terms of skills and employment, and just culture and activities in general. I think personally for me, just being a facilitator through that, I think for me it was just like amazing to see the amount of insight and perspective you can get just from talking to people. Just really is like a simple thing, but I think it really just shows the beauty of just having the community involved in these kind of projects. And some of the from those conversations and activities, a couple of barriers that for young people that were suggested were things like communication. Young people felt that there was not a lot of awareness regarding some of the facilities that were available to them, and because of that, not a lot of people knew that these were available to them. And I think that what they felt that was a barrier, and that was a common thing felt by a lot of young people. Also in terms of communication, also being listened to by decision makers. I think a lot of young people felt that there was a disconnect between people being affected by the decisions being made and actually the people who are making these decisions. And relating to that, there was the priorities of the regeneration that the young people had were things such as they wanted more leisure centers, more spaces that attended to the needs of younger audiences, as they felt there was not enough places where they could go, or they felt it met their needs. And another one of the priorities they felt that is that they actually had the urge to be at the forefront of this regeneration. They want to be involved in the culture and the creative activities that are going on, and just wanted to be more involved in the conversation about the regeneration that's happening in and around the Royal Docks. And just a reflection for me personally, I think just being a facilitator on this event, I think for me it was just like an amazing thing to see what happens when you put a group of young people in a space where you allow them to be creative and you give them the opportunity to help the community and give them opportunity to suggest and to be involved in the regeneration that's happening. A lot of the things that they mentioned were things that just the effect of it wasn't just felt by young people. A lot of the things that suggested were things that would benefit the community as a whole. I think it really just shows that what can happen when you give young people the platform to speak. I think also as well as that, also as well as that, I think think just seeing, just being impressed generally by the kind of ideas that came out of the young people. I think some of the ideas that came out of it, I think they were just mind-blowing, to be honest. And I think even as a young person myself, just seeing some of these things that came out of it were things that I didn't even think of myself as a young person. But it just shows that what happens when you put a group of young people together and give them the ability. That one of the ones that we came up with was a floating marker on top of the water. I think that was just something that blew my mind. That's something that I didn't even really think of. I've been to that bit of water for so long, and I never really thought of that. And that's really just something that just really impressed me throughout the day as a facilitator. That was me.
Great, thanks a lot, Mohammed, for sharing your experience. That's the end of our slides and our presentation. So Ben, I'll pass it back to you.
Great, thank you very much, Sarah and Mohammed. That was really fascinating. Thank you. And for those of you who just joined during those presentations, please do remember you can ask questions throughout, and I will answer those. I'll ask those questions at the end. So if you've got any questions for Sarah or Mohammed, do post them now. We're now going to be hearing from Jessie Lenson, who's Socioeconomic Development Manager for Silvertown and the International Quarter London at Lendlease, who's going to be sharing details about their partnership with UCL. Jessie, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Ben. So hi, everyone. And I just want to tell you a little bit about Lendlease and then go on to tell you about the Silvertown site and some of the work that we've been doing in the area with some of the stakeholders. So Lendlease is a global real estate and investment company with expertise in development, project management and construction, with a focus on shaping cities and creating strong and connected communities. Lendlease make up one half of the Silvertown partnership, which is a joint venture between Starwood Capital and Lendlease. Lendlease are the development manager. So as Sarah mentioned, the Silvertown partnership is the development partner for the Silvertown Quays site for the GLA, who are the landowner. So Silvertown is a 27-hectare site. So that's about the equivalent of about 50 football pitches. And it's situated within the heart of the Royal Docks regeneration. So as you can see from the image on the screen, it's on the southern side of the Royal Victoria Dock, opposite XL and adjacent to City Airport. It boasts a rich industrial heritage as it formed part of London's main docks during the first half of the 20th century and has sat vacant for the past 30 years. Next slide, please. Thank you. So as you may be aware, in 2019, the first phase of Silvertown was approved by the London Borough of Newham. And this includes 77,000 square meters of non-residential floor space, including the restoration of the Millennium Mills building, and 900 new homes. So since then, we've been busy working on plans to commence the delivery of phase one early next year in 2022. And I'll be providing some further updates soon. So I can include a link to our website in the chat and an email address where you can sign up for some further updates. Next slide, please, Ben. So as part of the regeneration of Silvertown Quays, our aspiration is to contribute towards long-term benefits for the community. So we've been working with a number of stakeholders to achieve this. In 2018, Lendlease partnered with University College London's Institute for Global Prosperity, joining the London Prosperity Board to support a 10-year longitudinal study in East London. The aim of the study is to observe how households in 12 neighbourhoods across East London self-report their prosperity over a 10-year period between 2021 and 2031. So the studies mainly focus on neighbourhoods that have been directly impacted by the regeneration of London's Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park and the Royal Docks. And it's the first study in the UK to track household prosperity using the IGP's Local Prosperity Index. So the Prosperity Index was based on extensive research carried out by citizen scientists involving young local people living and working in 5 East London neighbourhoods. So this reports on 15 factors that local people say support prosperity and quality of life in their neighbourhoods. And they cover a range of factors, including things like opportunities and aspirations, and health and healthy environments. So if you want to see a full list of those, you can look on the London Prosperity Board website, and the links are included in this presentation. The longitudinal study seeks to understand what it means to live a prosperous life in East London as defined by local people and communities themselves, and to create a system of measurement that provides people, groups and government with the tools to understand local issues in terms of what matters most to local people. So just to give you a little insight in terms of what the study will involve, they'll be seeking to address the following questions. So how is prosperity experienced by people from different backgrounds and living in different neighbourhoods? What are the local short and medium and long-term issues that enable people to prosper? And how are prosperity gains from regeneration distributed within and between neighbourhoods? The next slide, please. As part of the longitudinal study, the IGP will work with something called citizen social scientists. These are local people who live and work in the neighbourhoods where research is taking place, who are trained and employed to work as social researchers in their own community. The Citizen Scientist Programme will run from September to November this year, with recruitment to start in August. And there will be 12 opportunities for local people who will be paid London living wage and be trained by the IGP to interview people from their local communities. So once again, I'll include some links in the chat for some contacts to the IGP team, and all of these opportunities will be advertised locally. So the second part of the study is a household survey, which will commence in October. And this will involve door-to-door survey of the community. The IGP are currently in the process of selecting a research company to do this. So over this 10-year period, data will be collected from each of the 12 research sites 3 times in 2021, 2025 and 2029. Each time a new group of citizen social scientists will be recruited and trained, allowing for more opportunities for local people to participate. So for Lendlease, one of the most important aspects of this research and why we supported the longitudinal study is to gain an understanding of what matters most to the communities in which we're working in, and how we can then go on to co-create projects with local stakeholders which will have a tangible social impact. So thank you. That's the end of my slides, but I look forward to any questions.
Thank you very much, Jessie. I'm just checking with my team because I don't think the chat is open to all. So we'll probably have to send those around after to the group with the recording. So we'll make sure we do give everyone access to those. So thank you very much. We're now going to move on to Helen Fernandez, who's Community Development Manager at West Silvertown Foundation, who will tell us more about the community projects that they have been working on. Helen, over to you.
Oh, thank you. Hi, everyone. So yeah, I'm Helen Fernandez from West Silvertown Foundation, and we are a community-led organisation based in the southwest of the Royal Docks. So kind of between New City Hall and the Lendlease site that Jessie was just speaking about is where we're kind of originally based. And we're in a community called Britannia Village, and that's where our first site is. And that was built as it exists now in 1998. And when it was first built, it was kind of hailed as the future of urban redevelopment. I'm sure some of you will have heard about it. And that's because it has a very village feel to it. There's just 1,400 homes, and it's a mix of private and social housing right next to each other. And the thing with it was, although it looks very beautiful and it's a fantastic idea, there was very little done to invest in community infrastructure and to really think about what it would be like to live in this kind of urban village. So there was a community centre built, for example, but not kind of any investment in activities that would happen there. There was a brand new school built, but the wrong staff were put in place, and it was in special measures within a few years. Although there was lots of new flats and homes, there were no flats along the whole of the ground floor on the main roads, and the lighting was quite poor. So actually it kind of became a bit of a hub for crime because you weren't overlooked. It didn't feel like a safe place to walk at night. So by 2007, 10 years later, we actually had the highest crime rate per capita in Newham in this brand new development because of a lack of the social infrastructure that was needed. So in the summer of 2008, our organisation spoke to some of the local young men. A lot of the crime was being done by local young men from the social housing who just were seeing a lifestyle that they knew they were never going to have at the end of the day. And a lot of this was the kind of source of the crime. And we spoke to them and said, would you help us to do something positive this summer? Would you help us to run a summer activity programme for younger children? And so we got a team of these young men, and some of them were young women as well, and got them to run a programme for 100 local children. And that meant they were getting some honest money. It meant that they were doing something really positive with their times. And it also meant that by the evenings, they were too exhausted to actually do anything towards the crime rate. So that summer, rather than crime doubling as it usually did in the summer holidays when the young people were off, it halved. So it was 25% of what it was the year before. And that was the kind of beginnings of our story, West Silvertown Foundation as it's known now. With a real focus on youth work. And at that time, we took over the local community centre. And through that, we were able to run youth sessions and sessions for children and adults all throughout the week. But we knew that people having good things to do with their evenings and weekends was not going to be enough to make an impact in the area. It was not going to be enough for positive change. And so for us, a real key thing has been working in partnership with other organisations. So I spoke about the school going into special measures, but actually when new leadership came into the school, we were massively involved in that and in ensuring that that school was then really filled up from the bottom. One problem that was happening was that people with toddlers didn't have a place to send their child to daycare for nursery. So they would send them to nursery outside of the area, maybe near their work, and then they would continue to send their children outside for school because they'd got into that habit of that being where their children were based. So we worked with a local family to set up a daycare nursery, which has now been open for 10 years and is based in our community centre. And then we had a problem at the opposite end of the school where when families got children in year 5 or year 6, a lot of them chose to move out of the area because the local secondary schools at the time had very poor GCSE grades. So we worked with the primary school to set up a local secondary school, which for its first few years was actually based in our community centre while they were waiting for alternative accommodation. And that secondary school is now in its 8th year of being open. It's still not into its full permanent building, but it's going to be there by February. And it is literally a 2-minute walk from our first community centre. So we're kind of building this community infrastructure that's going to allow the community to thrive over the coming years. But over this 10 years that we've been around, the community has completely transformed. You've heard from Jessie and Sarah about the changes that are happening. And where Britannia Village used to be a very isolated group of 1,400 homes, it's now part of a much wider network and an ever-growing network of kind of micro communities around the Royal Docks. So one thing we've been keen to do is make sure that those new communities don't feel completely separate from the existing area here. And so we've set up a second community centre in Royal Wharf, which is a Ballymore development, just a 5-minute walk from our first community centre. And we set that up in September 2019. And right next to that is a second primary school, also run by Britannia Village Primary, so that we have this growing network of schools and centres, all with the same leadership, all with people that are on the same page, so that we can work together rather than compete in the community. And the school, the new primary school that's been built and also the new secondary school that will be completed next year have both been designed in a way that so that in the evenings and weekends, we can use those community spaces for community activities. So we can have the main halls, we can have rooftop football pitches, and we can hire those out to members of the community in the evenings and weekends. And with all of that happening, our original hall that was built as part of Section 106 in 1998 has really started showing that it is falling behind. It was never built to last. It was never built really with the intention of being used for much. From what we could see, it was just built because it had to be built very cheaply without a lot of thought about the design. And so we're currently looking now at a redevelopment project for our original community centre about how can we make that really a space that the community can be proud of, and not just to provide good community facilities and not just to provide a permanent home for the nursery that's really fit for purpose for them, but also to think about how can we support with housing for local people to be able to stay. We've heard about many of the new homes that are being built, but what we're hearing from a lot of local people is that they don't often feel those homes are for them. So how can we make sure that there are places where they can choose to stay and not be priced out of their area? So we're looking into this redevelopment project as a way of both building this network of community spaces, but also making sure that people who want to stay here can stay and can be part of forming the future of the Royal Docks. So that's what we've been up to, and it would be great to hear any questions and comments that you have later on.
Great, thank you very much, Helen. Very, very impressive. So hopefully, if anyone has any questions, please do pop them in the chat. I've got plenty for later. We're going to move on to our final speaker, and that will be Chris Abel, who's Local Issues Manager at Tate & Lyle Sugars, who's going to be talking about their industrial heritage and in the area and how they are building community wealth. Chris, over to you.
Hello, everyone. Just getting the technical stuff working here. Brilliant, thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm just going to talk through a few slides here today, just giving you a little bit of perspective on the sort of history of Tate & Lyle Sugars and our history of community involvement, and then a few of the things we're involved in today. So just a little bit on the history of Tate & Lyle Sugars. So Sarah showed earlier the location of our two sites in the Royal Docks. We've got Thames Refinery, which is a 50-acre site near London City Airport, and we have our smaller Lyle's Golden Syrup factory, which we call Plastow Wharf, very near West Silvertown, DLR. Thames Refinery was started in 1878. It was Henry Tate's original London sugar refinery. He bought the patent for the sugar cube from a Czech sugar refiner, and set up Thames Refinery to make those cubes. And it was a very clever move, because in the Victorian era, sugar was often adulterated with things like chalk dust, and also you often bought your groceries sort of weighed. And with the sugar cubes, you knew you were getting something which was untampered, unadulterated from the factory, and it was one of the first things where you had a specific portion and you could follow a recipe, X number of cubes to bake a certain cake. And he did very, very well out of those sugar cubes. Lyle, about 1.5 miles down the road, set up what was to begin with a rival sugar refinery, and his key innovation was golden syrup. He realized what was being discarded, what was essentially a waste product of the sugar refining process, still had some valuable sugars and sucrose in it, and he employed some chemists to investigate this, and he ultimately came up with the golden syrup product. You can see in this photo here, this is in the 1880s, some women packing sugar cubes at Thames Refinery into boxes, and here is Lyle's Golden Syrup. Every single drop of this has been made in the Royal Docks in West Silvertown. This tin has got the Guinness World Record for the oldest unchanged brand packaging, and we still make that today on some very old packing lines in West Silvertown. We still own and operate from these sites. We plan on being here we've been here I think 143 years now. We plan on being here for a long time to come, and we still make about 1/4 of the UK's sugar in the Royal Docks. There's loads I could say about the history, but I'm going to focus a bit on the history of community involvement. It really sort of starts almost right at the beginning of Tate & Lyle coming to the Royal Docks, really in that sort of era of kind of Victorian philanthropy of great industrialists donating part of their fortunes for the benefit of their workers or for the benefit of local communities. There's still two sort of physical markers of that today. The Tate Institute, which was established by Henry Tate to benefit the industrial classes of Silvertown and the neighbourhood, still stands today opposite Thames Refinery. It's actually owned by Newham Council currently, but from its establishment through the entirety of the 20th century, it was a major sort of hub for the community in sort of North Woolwich and Silvertown. with all sorts of different activities, from sort of wedding receptions to dances to snooker and darts, and to functioning as a social club. Lyle's were a bit different. It wasn't Abraham Lyle, it was his I think it was his children or grandchildren who donated Lyle Park, which is a lovely little park in West Silvertown. It's a bit of a sort of hidden oasis. It's got a very large river frontage, but a very small entrance, but a very nice quiet little park, which still stands to this day and is of real value to local people. The 50s and 60s were probably the sort of golden era in terms of employees and the extent of Tate & Lyle. We employed, I mean, 5,000 is probably an underestimate. We employed, probably 8,000 people locally. Many of them would have lived within walking distance of the factory, but and the vast majority of them would have been in East London, in Newham and the surrounding boroughs. And it's quite difficult to even sort of from 2021 to imagine what it was actually like then, and how much how tight knit the community was, and how much your sort of work, personal and family lives were all interlinked. We had, and we still do today actually to some degree, but then particularly we had multiple generations of the same family working for us. We had it was very common for people to meet their partners, their husband or wife at work, and there was all kinds of activities, football clubs. You can see down here a sports day. We used to have a sports ground in the local area, dances, social clubs, shooting clubs. We even had beauty pageants, which we probably wouldn't restart those today, but it just gives you an idea of the extent of what was going on. This is a little railway which we put on at the sports ground for children of employees 2 or 3 times a year. It was a really tight-knit local community, and we're really proud of the sort of history that we have in the local area. And just if anyone is interested, there's a fantastic book, social history book called The Sugar Girls, which has been written about our factories, and it really captures the Royal Docks in that sort of area. But to move forward into sort of today, time moves on. We still employ about 850, 900 people, but it's certainly not the extent it once was. But that sort of ethos, that community ethos, which has started right back at the beginning of our time in the area, we still take very, very seriously, and we like to think we do a lot to benefit the communities which we've been part of for such a long time, and we plan on being part of. Just got 2 or 3 different slides here just to give you I've put out a few specific elements. I think the first one, which is really interesting, I think particularly from a sort of Royal Docks perspective, where there's so much regeneration going on, is what I've sort of called land holdings for public good, if you like. We've got 3 charities we house on site. I'm going to just talk briefly about 2 of them. This one here, Community Food Enterprise, you can see the guys down here. That's essentially, it's like a wholesale food bank, and they will distribute food from their base at Tate & Lyle to food banks all around Newham and East London, and also little community centres as well. And it's a really, sadly needed, but it is a critical piece of kind of social infrastructure for East London, and thousands of people over the time they've been there have been provided with food by these guys. They're in a little warehouse down here. They've been there for 20 years, free of charge, secure base for them, and that sort of ability to give them that has enabled that service to take place without them having to worry about rent, knowing they've got someone who is a partner rather than just a sort of landlord, if you like. And similarly, another charity is in this area here, called Community Links, very well-known Newham charity. We've allowed them to set up a social enterprise there, so it's a slightly different approach. They've been there about 15 years. It's an events business, which has been really successful. They do a lot of work, actually with Newham Council. They do a lot of work. Got a very good reputation in kind of Newham and East London for events. And just to give you an idea there. They over a number of years have got the turnover up to about £600,000, and this is pre-COVID, and a profit of about £130,000, and all of that profit from that social enterprise goes back in to the larger Community Links charity, which has a number of different initiatives around Newham. And if you think about that £130,000, if elsewhere, that would probably be an overhead eaten up by the rent they were paying on the space we've given them. But because we can give them that space for free and have a long-term partnership with them, that they can generate that revenue, and really get it up to those kind of levels and feed it back into the community. You've seen a sort of red line. You can see in this diagram here, I've drawn a sort of red line hand here. Over time, as many people on this call will know, the value of the land in the area has increased immensely. We've increasingly moved our kind of sugar operations out of this section, but both of the charities have stayed in here. So we had to, as a business, start to look at it from as a very valuable asset, and we had to do a sort of kind of commercial evaluation of it. And we've I think the point here is if you think about what you want to do from a community perspective right at the beginning, you can actually do you can actually do things which make commercial sense, but also provide real community benefit here. So what we've done here is we've partnered with a meanwhile developer called Project, who specialize in kind of light industrial, creative and maker space, very much at the affordable end of the market. They've received some good growth funding from the Royal Docks team, who we've also worked extensively in partnership with to refurbish all of these buildings. All these buildings here, and that will provide about 100,000 square foot of affordable workspace. Critically, as well as the economic opportunity for local people from affordable workspace, you get an upgrade for those long-standing charity tenants, and you get them to be more at the heart of things. They struggle sometimes with volunteers. They now are going to get a large number of people in and around the area they're in, and it breathes some economic life back into this part of the land. Just moving on here, this is another initiative we have. It's called the Lyles Local Fund. It's a small grants program. It's usually £25,000. It's £50,000 last year. We upped it because of COVID and a number of issues that so many organisations were having. This was really set up because we're very well known in the local community, and we were getting all sorts of different ad hoc requests, and it was very difficult to evaluate evaluate those requests that were coming, often very, very worthwhile community organisations, very worthwhile initiatives, very worthwhile charity organisations, but we really wanted to try and formalise that a bit, and we decided to create a specific fund to provide a sort of focus for the different requests that we got. We partnered with Newham Council on this, and that works very, very well actually, and they help sort of administer and publicise the fund. They also have a sort of reviewing remit as well, which helps us helps us with intelligence. We know the Royal Docks very well, but we don't necessarily know as much about the wider Newham area, and that helps us kind of focus the funds to organisations who really need it, or maybe who've lost some funding, or who maybe Newham can inform us really it's a really needed piece of work in the local area. It also works very well as we engage employees in this, as well as a sort of democratic panel of employees who help to select which organisations receive grants. And these are really small grants, but which can make a massive difference on a really small level. And just to give you a couple of very quick examples, Newham Music was one we funded last year. That's a pop-up music studio which travels around different areas in Newham. It's focused on engaging 9 to 19-year-olds who are disadvantaged, vulnerable, and at risk. Choice is a program focused on, again, in Newham, on helping empower disabled people, particularly on a focus in career development opportunities and careers in inclusive fitness and disability sports. And then just on to last slide. this is, I think many people will know that community wealth building is a really sort of central plank of the kind of Newham policy agenda. It's also a major theme for the Royal Docks team. It's something that I know Sarah and her team are doing a lot of work on it. And Newham and the Royal Docks came to us, I think, probably about 18 months ago. You know, we were already in regular conversations with them about community wealth building, but saying, look, we see you guys fundamentally as a kind of anchor institution. We know you're doing a lot, and we're looking to formalise the role of business in the community wealth building agenda in Newham. And what you can see on screen here is really a summary of the kind of pledge we've made, and the community wealth building themes, the 6 themes that Newham see as central to community wealth building. So I think we were one of the first to sign up to formally sign up and become a official community wealth building partner of Newham and the Royal Docks, and it's actually you know, something which can be, I think, has really helped us as an organisation, because you've probably heard from the rest of the presentation, we're doing a lot of different activities, but actually it's in terms of community, but it's really helpful to focus us and to also make us think about some of the, what I'd call operational and day-to-day business and commercial operations, and how they can actually have a really good impact locally. So I'll just give a couple of very quick examples. The buy local one in particular, the fact we'd made a public pledge, the fact we'd had to sit down and think about this, the fact we'd got some clear direction by having to think about it and put a pledge together and agree it externally, you know, that enabled us to speak to finance, speak to procurement, put a bit of pressure on them and say, look, we need to make sure that where we can, as a part of our routine, we're seeking out quotes from Newham suppliers and Newham businesses. The other one, just quickly, quite different one, is pursuing innovation. As a large business, we pay the apprenticeship levy, but lots of businesses will pay that. That goes into a central government pot, and you can then claim that back to train your employees, to put your employees on apprenticeships. There's a number of ways to claim that back, but like many larger businesses, we weren't going to spend it all. That can either sit in a central government pot, or what you can do is essentially donate that levy locally. And I don't think we would have done that if we hadn't had to think quite strategically and make this public pledge. So our initial donation has been to a local charity called 15 billion EBP to sponsor 2 apprentices in the local area, and it's a really good example of that kind of local approach, that keeping circular economy, keeping money in the area that would have flowed out of Newham, and it's an ability to put two young people into a good quality apprenticeship, which give them options for the future. I imagine we're probably running a little bit over time, so I'm going to wrap up there and hand back to Ben. But thank you very much for that.
Thanks very much, Chris. That was fascinating. So we've got about 10 minutes now for our Q&A. I've got a couple of questions I'm going to kick off with, but if anyone in the audience does have questions, please do post them. And for our speakers, if we can, let's try and keep our answers brief, but there's a few really interesting ones that I want to ask and get to. I'm going to come to you first, Sarah, but this is kind of an open question. Obviously, there's a lot of collaboration going on here, and I wanted to ask sort of what are the benefits of collaborating with so many different organizations, but also what are some of those key challenges when looking at that collaboration? So if I come to you first, Sarah.
Yeah, well, I think Chris explained quite well one of the benefits of the collaboration there, like the coordinated investment into communities and trying to do that in a more strategic way, I think is a benefit that comes from sharing what you're doing, sharing your priorities and trying to set priorities together about what local people care about and what is actually going to benefit the local community. So that money from where Chris talked about the 15 billion EPB has been reinvested into Newham, and that was kind of driven by a shared agenda setting of the Royal Docks needs to be a place which enables young people to have visibility of and access to quality employment opportunities and training programs, and how can we keep that money locked in locally? So taking the community wealth building agenda from Newham, looking at the possibilities of the enterprise zone and what that presents as something different, and then looking at the responsibility and role of an anchor institution and how that might inspire other businesses to also take up this community wealth building pledge, and then looking at thematic priorities that we know are important for the very local area. The challenges are many and great. Timelines is a big challenge. Each development, and there are a lot of developments, there's not only the 3 developments there's also some others that came up. There's about another 8 developments all around, some of which the GLA are involved in, not all owning land of, but they need to be done in a coordinated way somewhat in order to produce this whole area. But everyone has their own timelines, and everyone is delivering against targets and budget and has their own limitations. That's a real challenge for any concept of co-design or co-creation, which is central to making sure that people are part of what is happening. And communications is a big part of it. So Mohammed talked about just knowing what's going on in the area. And that's something that comes up again and again and again, because it's been an area that's been disconnected and some communities have felt disenfranchised for a long time. So trying to rebuild those local communications networks and communicate what is happening in a way that enables people to be part of it, that doesn't talk down to people in a paternalistic way, but creates opportunities for people to get involved, takes a really long time. So that challenge, that's just one of the many challenges, but yeah, a lot of conflicts in how we want to work, I think, across different partners.
Sure. Thank you, Sarah. I'm going to come to Helen next, and just on some of the big challenges, but also if you can answer one of the questions we got on the audience, from the audience about, you talked about ensuring the new homes are for existing residents not priced out. How are you doing that, and how are you then communicating that to those residents? So some of your challenges, and then how are you tackling that specific issue?
Thanks, Ben. So I think challenges for us, partly Sarah touched on it really, is about people coming with their own set of priorities. You know, we are a community organisation and we therefore have some priorities. And when we're working with, whether that's businesses or schools or developers, everyone has their own set of priorities that they need to meet. And although we're able to find common ground and work together, that can be a challenge. So one example for us is our second community centre that we set up in 2019 is on Ballymore's land. It is Ballymore's building, and they are essentially commissioning us to run it for them, which is fantastic for us. It means that we're able to employ staff and that they're paying for it, and that's coming out of resident service charge. So absolutely brilliant. But it also means that then Ballymore have their agenda for what they would like to see happening in that community centre. And as a developer, they might have quite a different understanding to what we do of what should happen in that space. So it's how to hold that tension and make sure that the community is getting the best out of it, but that both parties are still really happy to be involved in it, and that relationship's then not damaged. Yeah, so I'd say that's kind of our biggest challenge, probably, is kind of just making sure when we're working in partnership, which we do most of the time, how do we do it in a way where everyone's still able to feel like they're getting what they need from that partnership? And on the question about the housing, so this redevelopment project, we kind of kicked off our public consultation about it in January with a big community survey, and had around 200 responses to that. And then from that, we formed an advisory group of around 20 residents and stakeholders that have met 3 times since then to kind of share ideas around the space itself and around the housing. And so those 20 people, they're quite a representative group, and we're trying to use those as kind of key people to represent the community. And we've just now submitted our pre-app. So we're in this kind of lull period at the moment. But in terms of how we make sure that things are affordable, really, it's a balancing act again of that kind of, our priority is to have a good community centre, but also good housing. So just ensuring we get the best out of those as much as possible, and looking at the different funding streams that we can use to do that. And then in terms of communicating, it's it's throughout, we have a reach of around 2,000 local residents that we've worked with since 2019. So making sure that we're communicating with all of them about what's happening, using this advisory group for kind of real detailed feedback and real detailed input, and then just trying to make sure that we're keeping regular emails and regular flyers and things going through resident stores, knowing that there will have to be some in-depth feedback and some that is much more surface level.
Great, thank you, Helen. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come to Sarah and Mohammed on a question on the event, and then I'm going to come to each of you just on sort of final thoughts on actually some advice. So Sarah, we had a question through around how the fantastic event you organised with young people and how difficult that was to organise. And then Mohammed, I'd like to hear a bit from you about what appealed to you about the event. Why did you decide to go? So maybe if I come to you, Sarah, on the event.
Sure, it took couple of months to organize, I think, because it wasn't just organizing an event, it was a process of equipping and enabling young people to develop the skills to be able to run it themselves and to understand the priorities of the regeneration area so that they could find out the best way that they thought would be possible to engage young people in that conversation. So yeah, maybe I'll pass on to Mohammed to finish answering that question.
Yeah, I think for me, originally I joined the community group for the Royal Docks, and I think I joined that just to be more involved in the community. I felt like there's a lot going on that I don't know about, and I just wanted to be more involved in it. And then when the opportunity came up to be involved with the youth event, I think it was just an opportunity that I just had to take up, really. I think just it was something that I wanted to do, especially as it's relating to kind of like my generation and my demographic. So I want to be involved in it in that way and just be part of the regeneration, I guess, and just be involved.
Great, thank you. So what I'm going to finish on then, I'm going to come to Jessie, Chris, and then Sarah and Helen, just on, I'm sure there are people in the audience who are, tackling with a lot of these issues and challenges, and I wonder if you can give any sort of final thoughts or advice on how best to work with communities in your experience. So if I can come to Jessie first.
So obviously the approach we take is collaborative, and that all of the collaboration is very beneficial for our perspective, because to get those kind of insights about and an understanding about the needs of an area that we're working in, that's the most important thing, to really understand what we should do and how we can work with others. And I think just being open and listening and understanding that people have different agendas, but being willing to think about different ways of doing things. So I think, we're here, we're accessible, you can come and speak to us, and we're hoping to be part of many different things across the Royal Docks as time goes forward.
Great, thanks, Jessie. Chris?
Yeah, so I think I'd say sort of three things really. I think just like Jessie said, just listening is really important. I was talking about the Lyles Local Fund and the range of different people we get contacting us asking for money or land, or can we support this, or can we host this tour at the factory, or whatever it might be. And I think just properly listening to people, even if the answer might be no, rather than just shutting them down, and just considering what they're asking for and genuinely giving them the chance to explain is so critically important. And that's not just people contact, that's also when we're out doing things in the community. The second thing I'd say is actually what I'd call clarity. Don't give do everything that you can, but don't give people false hope. I mean, I've experienced quite a few interactions with developers myself, around what may or may not be happening on bits of land, and what benefits it's going to bring to the community, or how, from a business perspective, how it will affect Tate and Lyle. And you often find that there's a lot of sort of thing, there's a lack of clarity, or people think certain things are going to happen or going to benefit them, and they never materialize. And I think for us as an organization, we always try to, even if it's not necessarily good news, we always try and provide honesty and clarity to people. And then the final thing I'd say is that small things over time add up. It's about a sort of commitment, being regularly present in the community, volunteering at local community centres, going and speaking regularly with some of the charity partners, I talked about organising stuff, you know, volunteering days in the community, all these little different things together, committing to doing them over time, add up to relationships and a good reputation in the local community, and can make a really big difference in terms of the local community.
Great, thanks, Chris. Helen.
So I might see this slightly differently to other people, because I'm often one of the people that maybe Jessie or Sarah might come to if they want to hear from the community. And, you know, I live in the area myself, but I wasn't born here. So I still, although I've been here 12 years, I'm a bit of an intruder. And I think for me, it's really important when we hear that people are wanting to get the opinions of local people, we always make sure we speak to people that will not put themselves forward. We find that there are certain types of people that will always want to have their say, particularly around regeneration. And a lot of them aren't necessarily people that have lived here a long time, and aren't necessarily people whose opinions are representative. And so I think for my advice to people, I guess, is to contact organisations like us who might know people that maybe aren't putting themselves forward. So an example is Jessie actually did this when Lend-Lease had a website consultation. It was a fantastic website, really in-depth, kind of consulting on the Silvertown site. But Jessie said to me, we can tell that these answers aren't representative of the local community. Can you help us to meet some other people? And that's my first experience of the developer doing that. And things like that, I think, are really positive in terms of actually making sure you're hearing from a real range of people.
Great, thank you, Helen. And final thoughts, Sarah.
Yeah, building on that, I think we need to look at other ways that people can give their input beyond the traditional routes. So not just beyond online, although that's really important, but beyond just this kind of question and answer feedback approach, but a way that enables people's creative capacities to propose and to design. I think that's the way that we will start to imagine alternative ways of building cities together, rather than just kind of asking people for what they need. You know, that kind of stops a conversation, whereas a designing conversation and doing something creative together opens up possibilities. So I think focusing more on that is something we could all do.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sarah. Sorry, we run over a little bit, but it was a fascinating conversation. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you to our speakers. Do check out our website for some upcoming events. We've got quite a lot going on over the summer, and we're now just going to do a quick short poll on the event at the end. But thank you all for coming, and see you all at the next one. Thanks. Bye-bye.